The Last Jedi is a sequel very much in the vein of Age of Ultron and Batman v Superman, which is probably gonna make a lot of you lose your shit as you're listening to this, but I think the comparison is very apt because the intent between these three films is very apparent when you watch them. These are three films that have their own take on the various brands that they're building up to. They're not afraid to pursue that vision. Fanboys be damned. Considering the fact that the Star Wars fandom is already super divided about The Last Jedi, it's safe to classify it as probably the controversial blockbuster 2017, which blows my mind because this is the sequel to The Force Awakens, a competent movie that is so completely afraid to do almost anything remotely interesting with the Star Wars brand in any kind of narrative sense that it borders on complete vapid. I do legitimately think that the plagiarism accusations that are leveled at The Force Awakens have actual merit. And then when I see this movie, I just wonder to myself, how the fuck did we go from that to this? Because this is a true directorial driven movie. This is a movie where a dude who wants Star Wars to do new and interesting things, isn't afraid to take it into actually controversial directions, fanboy and even general audience expectations be damned, that he just goes right into it, and the end result is just one of the most interesting, or perhaps the most interesting Star Wars film experiences I've ever had. And in a lot of ways, The Last Jedi feels like Age of Ultron done well. It feels like BVS done significantly better. It feels like a significantly better sequel than The Force Awakens ever was. And it's also a way better war movie than Rogue One. I cannot believe, once again, that I'm talking about a Star Wars film under the Disney regime. The mainline sequel movies should be the most generic, trite bullshit Hollywood can possibly produce, but it's the mainline saga film that just kind of goes mad dog on the whole thing, and the end result is something spectacular. This does not feel like a traditional Star Wars movie, and I mean that with absolute sincerity, and I mean that as a compliment. I'm someone who has a very low opinion of the Star Wars films. Even the ones I consider to be actually good, I don't particularly care for them. I've always been a guy who's thought that the expanded universe, the comic books, the novels, both pre and post Disney, are the places where the most interesting Star Wars stuff is done. This is the place where we get the most interesting character arcs, where we get to break from tradition, where we get to examine interesting sides to the Force, to the Jedi, to the Sith. What does it mean to be a light side user or dark side user, and the various hypocrisies and faults of both sides. And this feels like the first expanded universe film. All of the Star Wars movies have to varying degrees tried to adhere to the original trilogy formula. Even the prequels, which I give kudos to for their risks, still very much hit a lot of the same beats. But this is the first Star Wars movie where someone just decided to say, fuck that, we're gonna do our thing, and the end result is something that not only works, it works really, really well, but it's also, like I said, genuinely gonna divide people, and it already is. I can already see people massively turning on Rian Johnson, that they don't want his trilogy movie. I already see people saying that Rian Johnson should have done like a Star Wars spin-off film, that something so radical, so controversial does not belong in the mainline series. But I'm actually really glad that this beast exists, not just because I've been kind of hungry for the possibility of a Star Wars movie that appeals to me, but also because the Hollywood output for the past couple months has been so shit. Between Blade Runner 2049, Thor Ragnarok, and Justice League, all these big movies just kind of being mediocre or legitimately bad. It's so nice to be able to watch a late 2017 blockbuster movie after it that's actually being good for a change. But this is also a film that I can't really talk about super in depth because a lot of the things that work in it do work because of the surprise factor, and that could become a double-edged sword for the film moving forward. And this is going to be one of those movies that people are going to love looking back on because Rian Johnson is a master of world building. There are so many small details in this film that I didn't even notice on the first viewing, and I only picked up on them while conversing with other people about film, where you have like these very small details that, build the universe up. He's a master of world building, in the environment. Ankto, the planet where Luke and Rey spend a lot of the movie on, feels like a genuinely lived-in place with its own culture, with its own, unique alien species. And that's just one example of a film that's chock full of really good world building, but also cinematography, because once again, this is not just a standard McDefault Star Wars film. The way the fight scenes are filmed does not feel like Star Wars. The way the shots are composed, the way they play around with the camera, it feels like somebody with actual innovation showing up and saying, look, guys, Star Wars can do cool new shit too. We don't have to dick suck the originals in every conceivable fashion. And the results are absolutely spectacular because I like space battles. I have never liked space battles, but in this movie, the way they're shot, the way they're, constructed, it all feels so real, so cool, and the realness of the fight scenes helps them out a lot. A lot of times in action movies, we have a lot of fight scenes that exist just for the sake of themselves because we have to have a fight scene. But the way Rian Johnson weaves in the realism, a slightly realistic angle to the fight scenes, it makes every fight matter. Every fight has a purpose. There is absolutely no fight in this entire movie where I feel like, yeah, this only exists for the sake of spectacle and nothing else. This is just there for, to excite the audience for like 5-10 minutes, and then we move on with the story. All the fight scenes feel appropriate. All the fight scenes feel like they matter. And when they have that little dose of realism to them, that little dose of viciousness, it adds a lot to the movie and makes you care. And this is also a really good war movie because, once again, thanks to the cinematography and the way we kind of linger on background characters, the way we kind of introduce like these small people who don't play a big role in the story, a lot of people whose names you never even know, the way we use the cinematography to like make this universe feel more populated than it ever has before, it also helps make the big battles feel like they have real people. So when you see like these small background characters occasionally pop in every so often, and they manage to leave an impression on you when they die or when they do something, it really works and makes the war feel very much effective. And this is also a film that's about self-sacrifice, that's about rising above yourself and believing in other things, especially in the big resistance storyline, that having these background characters whose names you don't even learn a lot of the time, managing to leave an impression on you and managing to make you care about them when they do die, it's all really super cool stuff. And it also makes you feel like that there are other people in this war who are capable of being heroes. There are other people in this war who are capable of self-sacrifice, who are able to do cool stuff besides just the mandatory main cast. And it, once again, helps the world feel like a very much lived in place. There's also a really cool meta-narrative with regards to the originals that feels kind of like a criticism of not just the so far Disney output of Star Wars films, but also kind of a critique of our big nostalgia boners at the moment. A lot of the Rey and Kylo Ren stuff is very much addressing the fact that no, the next generation cannot just copy the old. The next generation has to move on in a good and in a negative way. They have to kind of burn away the past and truly go into their own direction. And so this is a fucking Star Wars movie with an actual meta-narrative that feels very much appropriate for the time. And I would even say that this film improves on something that I really dislike in Empire Strikes Back. Because Empire has a really slow, really crappy second act, where we alternate between watching Luke and Yoda do nothing on Dagobah, and then we alternate between Luke and Yoda do nothing on Dagobah to Leia and Han trying to do something but ultimately amounting to nothing on the Falcon for a good third of the film. But this movie has several not only big storylines that happen simultaneously and then converge at the very end, we have subplots within each of the storylines, and it all makes the film feel very involved. Everybody feels like they have something worthwhile to do. Everything feels like it's feeding into several themes and ideas simultaneously. The Rey stuff has themes of its own. The Finn and Poe stuff kind of has the same theme, but it's kind of looked at through two very different lenses. And I even like Rose. Rose is very much one of those people who's not super special. She's not like an ace pilot. She's not a super cool Jedi. She's not anything really special. She's just kind of like this regular person who believes in the ideals of the Resistance. And having a person like that in the Star Wars main cast, no less, is really special, and it lets you kind of humanize the entire universe. Also, Mark Hamill kind of steals the show in this movie. I've never really given a crap about Luke Skywalker, even under the pen of great writers such as Timothy Zahn. I've never cared for the guy. But bitchy, old, cranky, ruined Luke is not only a lot of fun, but he has a lot of pathos to him. Some of his face acting alone is absolutely haunting. And there are so many scenes in this movie where when I wanted to freeze frame it and just make it a wallpaper on my desktop. Like, that's how fucking good the cinematography is and how good the CGI is, the visual effects. All of it really, really does work out, and it makes for a really interesting Star Wars film experience. If there are two issues that I can concretely say that the film has, is that it's the Force and it's Finn. The Force has that old expanded universe problem where writers are just saying it can do whatever the hell we need it to, and that kind of gets on my tits because it's kind of like the Rey thing from The Force Awakens, except it's spreading to a lot of other people, and I don't like that. I really wanted them to dial back on that, and they haven't, and so the Force can just do whatever the writing needs it to at the moment. And because the Force is so vague, you can't even say it doesn't work or it doesn't make sense because the Force never really had a set rule of guidelines beforehand. So if someone wants to just shut down your complaining over that fact, they can very much do that. So that kind of gets on my tits. And then there's Finn. Finn is kind of like Batman in the Justice League movie, and that's kind of all I want to say on that subject, because if you know what I think they should have done with Batman in the Justice League movie, I might have just spoiled a big thing about Finn for you, but I don't care because I think they should have gone in that direction. And honestly, Finn's whole character arc is okay, but I feel like they should have left it for the third movie. This film is not really afraid to break some of the stuff that was set up in The Force Awakens, and I feel like the thing between Finn and a certain other character should have been left as a payoff for the third film, because that would have made a much more coherent arc. As it stands, it's just kind of like a payoff to something that was barely set up beforehand, and so it doesn't entirely work, and they totally should have Justice League Batmaned him, but that's all I'm going to say on that topic. If you're one of my friends, or you're someone who's seen my Justice League video and what I think they should have done with Batman, you're going to know exactly what I mean by this comparison. So yeah, The Last Jedi, it's fucking mental. It's a lot of different movies over the past few years, both Star Wars and non-Star Wars, that's kind of blended together and executed way better than all the ones that I listed beforehand. It's insane. It has a lot of really controversial decisions, but I like it. It's a total Mad Dog movie, but it's one of those Mad Dog movies that's executed with such precision and such almost complete quality that I just can't help but be a fan of it. And I really want to watch this movie again because a lot of the first viewing experience was, holy shit, I can't believe I'm seeing this in a Star Wars movie of all places. I really want to see it again now that I know where everything is, now that I kind of know how the execution looks like and how the film's going to hold up. But I suspect this is going to be one of those movies where I'm going to be the crazy guy who's going to like it, while the big other Star Wars fans, air quotes, are going to hate the shit out of it, but screw those people. They like The Force Awakens, and so their opinions don't matter. Anyway, if you've seen The Last Jedi, how did you like it? Do you like the Mad Dog approach? Do you dislike it? Please comment down below, and hopefully I'll see you.